Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. We have another edition of what they're talking about and what they're saying in Cincinnati. I'm joined by sports anchor from WKRC in Cincinnati, Gary Miller. Gary, thanks so much for coming on. We were just talking about how beautiful the weather is that treated you here in Buffalo.
I think we're going to get a mix of everything, and actually Cincinnati is expecting something similar. So I guess the drive didn't really impact things. Coming this 7 hours north.
Yeah, you didn't escape anything, not at all.
No.
I appreciate it. Again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Gary, we met briefly Monday night about 3 weeks ago before the game. We've talked to the players a lot this week in Buffalo about what the emotion is going to be like for them playing Cincinnati again. What have the Bengals players been saying about the emotion, if there is any, and how they're kind of trying to handle what was just an unbelievably tragic and scary situation to now play again?
Well, they're downplaying it like pro football players are prone to do about any sort of influence on their game readiness. I think it might have been more impactful when they came back and played the Ravens on the same field with that emblem, with the 30-yard line in blue for DeMar, and they got through it all right. What they say to me universally is, once the kickoff happens and once the play starts, even with, they do talk about some of the bonding with some of the players, and there's guys like Logan Wilson and Josh Allen who were pals before this even happened, and obviously DeMar played with a few of the guys that are on the Bengals, including Cal Adamitis. But I think it's all business once they start to play, and I think the only factor that could kind of ramp that up a bit is if DeMar is at the game and what they do in terms of that.
I agree. And like I said, the Bills have kind of been saying the same thing. And Deion Dawkins said this week that it kind of felt like a positive bubble of positivity because of DeMar's been back around the building. That like and that kind of positivity has kind of gone back in the players. They talked about a weight being lifted off when he was out of the hospital and things like that. So that's where it does. It transitions into just another game with a lot on the line. And Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier on the Bills side, they've talked about how they're coming up with a new game plan. What have the Bengals been saying? Because there's really only been 2 games in really 3 weeks, and there was only, 15 plays in that game. What have the Bengals kind of been talking about with reusing the same game plan or starting over?
Well, for our Bengals show every week, I get one-on-ones with Zach Taylor, so I asked him about that, and he yes, we said about the players, he kind of downplayed that, but obviously some of that stuff will stay in. They didn't use it all, even though they were very successful on both those drives, including the interrupted one when T. Higgins ran into DeMar Hamlin. I think the other thing that they rely on, besides whatever they did that week in preparation, is they played the AFC East this year. So they're familiar with the teams. They have a lot of film on the Bills.
Yeah.
And the teams that they've also played against, so that they have a lot of background on this team that they're going to face on Sunday.
I've been seeing a lot of Joe Mixon, some of his animated quotes from the locker room. The Bills and Bengals, I feel like in the sense, feed off the doubters, that they like to be that kind of disrespected, nobody's thinking about us. Obviously, the Bills are favored in this game. They were favored on Monday night in the odds books, but am I right by saying both these teams, like Joe Mixon kind of saying like, we're still the big dogs in the AFC and that's just the way it is? Like, that's another motivating factor for this team?
It's been an evolution, and there are a lot of parallels between the cities and the teams and franchises, and even some of the personnel.
Yeah.
But it's funny how it's changed from last year's run to the Super Bowl. During the season was, why not us? Mm-hmm. Then as they started winning playoff games, especially on the road, they get to the Super Bowl and says, it is us. And now this year it's, they got to play us. And as they're being asked this week about being underdogs in this game, they're basically saying, Zach Taylor himself, who always downplays anything, he always gives ultimate respect to the opposition and doesn't really toot their own horn much, said basically, hey, we're the reigning AFC champs. We're not underdogs to anybody. Same thing Joe Burrow said. He said he never feels like an underdog, and he's got some background to support that. And I think guys like Mixon and maybe Jamar Chase to an extent, yeah, they have some chip on their shoulder to them about that. And I think it's more about not so much that underdog mentality as how come we're not getting the same attention that Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the Bills and Chiefs get, that even guys in the NFC, you were always showing the New York teams, or we're talking about the Eagles. You don't talk about Cincinnati much, and their success rate has been incredible over the last season and now almost 2 full seasons.
Yeah, you mentioned him because I think Joe Burrow is just a fantastic quarterback. The swagger that he has and all of those things. And I remember my live hit on Monday night before that game was, this is the first installment of the Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. We've seen Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, but you being around the team every day, just how cool is Joe Burrow, I guess, in the grand scheme of things?
It's interesting, Dan, because he compartmentalizes certain aspects of his life. So he does his media on Wednesday or after the games, and it's strictly timed. You can see him watch the clock once in a while. It's in between 12 and 15 minutes. And
sure.
And around that 12-minute mark, you'll see him look to see the clock. So it's not like he hates it. He knows it's part of the job. He's the captain. He's a leader. But
yeah.
And then I'll watch the thing he does with Colin Cowherd that he gets clearly compensated for, and it's a lot of the same answers. He's just not. It's actually improved quite a bit the last few weeks for whatever reason. He's a lot more forthcoming. Normally, the soundbite you would get from Joe would be 10 to 12 seconds. Mm-hmm. Sometimes now you're getting 20 to 30, and even expounding on some things without having to push and press him.
Yeah.
But you don't see the thing that makes him such a favorite of his teammates. In the offseason, he's a big UFC fan. So he would go to MMA matches with Jets Bates. T. Higgins, I think, went to him with some. Cool. Sam Hubbard and he are really tight because they were at Ohio State together as well as now. Mm-hmm. So you don't really see, unless it's after they've clinched the division, beaten Baltimore in the season finale and all the cigars come out, you don't see Joe swagger to the general public, but you see it, in glimpses when we're allowed in the locker room in the ping pong games or whatever, or the clothes he wears, either to the stadium on Sundays or just in general in the locker room. There's a lot of cartoon character things with him, and we'll ask him about, his relationship with some of he's grown in terms of his celebrity so that he now knows, people in other entertainment fields. And he's still the guy from Athens, Ohio. He's still pretty down to earth, but he really can carry it. And I think the thing that the swagger, the Joe Cool part is that confidence and the leadership quality that he has. And these guys, both sides of the ball, are big. They're just so connected to him. And so they admire his work ethic and how he does it. And the other thing is quarterbacks have a history of giving watches to their linemen and stuff. He's sending all his linemen on a cruise.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's so funny, the similarities, like all those things you're talking about with Burrow are a lot of the things that we talk about with Josh. Like kind of, I know, like number one overall pick is different, but the way they have become from great quarterbacks to like superstars, where like when they go places, now people are like, there's Joe Burrow, there's Josh Allen. Like it's a different category. And we've talked to his teammates about, has Josh changed, now that he goes and does these things? And they're like, nah, he's just the regular same guy, like dropping movie quotes and cracking jokes at practice. And that kind of gets that same vibe. And it's not fair to compare quarterbacks, but they just kind of have both of the time that quiet confidence along with that competitiveness. And when you look at his growth as a quarterback, Leslie Frazier said the biggest compliment, or the thing that he's most impressed by with Burrow, is his ability to take the 4 and 5 yard completions and not always go for the alley-oop plays. And I did a video on here and I talked about how Josh last week against Miami took every deep shot possible and abandoned the guys underneath. He had 0 completions to his running backs. Is that what another thing that stands out to you for his on the field play as to what makes Joe Burrow so good, so tough to defend?
I think it's his adaptability, because obviously he would prefer, and certainly Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and even Tyler Boyd to some extent would love the home run ball.
Yeah.
But obviously teams have taken that away from them and they've adjusted. So that, yeah, they love to go underneath to Boyd. You see Chase in a lot of crossing patterns because he doesn't look as big and fast as he is, but he's a very physical receiver. And Baltimore tried to beat on him and play dirty against him and stuff, and he ate it up. And he does not mind going across the middle. They will throw to their backs quite a bit. P. Ryan has been very good at receiving the ball. Yeah. And, his tight end, Hayden Hurst, has been a great addition too. So, yeah, I think the other thing that makes Joe Burrow so incredible is, he doesn't have a Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, chuck it 60 yards flat-footed. Right. And he'll admit that. But he says, I can get it there. But the other thing that he has is he's got kind of a Peyton Manning type preparation and intuitiveness about what he's seeing and how to beat it and what they're taking away. And his speed at adjusting and going to the check down is right at the top.
Yeah. What is something that maybe big picture fan base and you that concerns you the most? If there's an area that you say, this is a little nerve-wracking, this is what I'm concerned about heading into Sunday against Buffalo, what is that? Or, for you and maybe what you're hearing around the city?
The city's funny because it's a mixture of, there's a lot of fans. There are plenty of diehards, as there are in every town, but there are a lot of lean years that got him the Joe Burrow pick first overall and Chase fifth overall. You have a 2 and a 4 win season, and you hear a lot of negativity. Now the city is just everything Bengals on our newscasts. We lead with Bengals and do it 2 or 3 times per half hour.
Yep.
But there's also the history of the people who have seen all that, those 2 win seasons. That wasn't the only 2 win season. But right now it's a lot of sky high optimism and enthusiasm and thinking, oh, we should have won the Super Bowl. Let's get back there and finish the job. As far as the reality of it is, they had an incredible run of not having missed. The only snaps that had been missed on this rebuild offensive line were when Jonah Williams got hurt against the Ravens, dislocated the other knee in that game, and came back, finished that game, and hadn't missed a snap since.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any chance. I guess there's an outside chance he plays, but I think this one's worse. I don't think there's any chance Alex Kappa plays. La'el Collins got hurt on Christmas Eve against the Patriots. So the right side of the line is replaced. Now you're missing the left tackle, one of the more important parts, and Jackson Carman, who has been kind of a wasted second-round pick and has really been practicing at guard, suddenly comes in at left tackle for Jonah. I think that's the biggest issue. And another thing we've seen about Burrow in terms of his growth, his escapability has been incredible. And unfortunately, it has had to been the last few weeks since these linemen started going down. So it's imperative for the Bills, in my eyes, to take advantage of that, especially on the left side of the line, but also the rebuilt right side. They've done okay, and the short game is what helps Burrow with that too.
Yeah.
But that's where the Bills could really exploit them, and especially if you get not only a sack and force a 3 and out, but turnover.
Yeah.
Joe gave one up against Baltimore, so that's where the Bills, I think, should concentrate.
Yeah, Gary, we were on the same page because my next question was about the offensive line, and you just answered that. So that was perfectly done. One last thing before I let you go, your prediction for the game, if you got one, and how you see Sunday shaking out. Put you on the spot.
It's become, the slogan for the Bengals is Hoo Day, and lately, a lot of them have been shoo day because they barely pull them out. They really shouldn't have won that Baltimore game.
Yeah.
And they're playing, they've been playing against a series of backup quarterbacks, and certainly not Tom Brady in his prime. And every one of those games was in the balance.
Yeah.
Now they're playing against Josh Allen. So the thing that I regret, and I think you had a sense of that too, Dan, on that Monday night, was I've never had a sense in a pregame on the field, as close to kickoff as we were, of two teams that were more ready for a regular season game. I know it was week 16, and there was so much on the line. Even the top seed was still at stake. I have not seen them been able to recreate that. I'm not sure if Sunday will. The nighttime atmosphere has something to do with that, and they had that Sunday night against Baltimore. It was kind of there, but that's the other thing besides obviously what happened to Damar Hamlin that I really missed, because those two teams were so primed that night. I hope we can get that back. It's the old Zach Taylor always apologizes, saying it always comes down to turnovers. I got to go with Cincinnati slightly because of that, because they've been on this turnover spree, getting multiple ones, let alone 5 in 5 straight playoff games. And the Bills have been on this giveaway spree. And if Josh Allen does what he did against Miami and decides to start chucking home run balls, I think it's going to be a mistake. Hopefully they've learned from that for Buffalo's sake, because I think that would be the determining factor.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's going to come down to turnovers, and I think, I don't know what the vibe was like for you guys on Sunday night, but for us, and maybe it was partly because it was Sunday at 1, which felt so boring, on top of it being Miami, and going against Skylar Thompson, it didn't have the juice. And I looked over at some of the guys. I was on the field filming, and I looked over at some of our other photogs, and I was like, this feels like a preseason game. There was really no energy. I don't think that's going to be the case at Sunday at 3, especially, there was rumors that DeMar was going to be there at the last game. There's a possibility he comes to this game. So I expect it to be this culmination of the 3 weeks that we had of really building up to that Monday night game, and then kind of obviously everything that happened afterwards. So yeah, I don't know.
I agree with
it's
you.
close.
One more quick one for you, Dan, was I agree. I got the sense watching that game on TV that you just described. Baltimore, you're playing them back-to-back. But the one thing I think could be a factor that Zach Taylor kind of denied is Baltimore is very physical, kind of dirty in a way, and they beat on them a lot. He wouldn't admit that that's different than playing a wide-open freestyle game with Miami. I think that could be a factor. You've seen it already with some of the injuries. So that could play a role.
I liked Baltimore as a live underdog just because I thought they could dirty up a game. Like you said, and like I said, Sam Hubbard makes that play, and obviously everything flips. But hey, you want to know what? You don't have to apologize for being lucky. And to make it to the Super Bowl, you need luck. So the Bengals made the play. Let's just hope it's a great one on Sunday at 3. I will see you there in the press box. Thanks again so much for doing this, Gary. I really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.
Dan. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you on Sunday. Thanks for watching here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel.